Hello and welcome to the Gaggle What We Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, addressed the nation last night on prime time on the subject of Israel, something that he has given many addresses already since October the 7th. It's quite extraordinary. A man who had little to say about, East Palestine, he had little to say about Hawaii, but he seems to have an awful lot to say about Israel. But nonetheless, he delivered this address, but it was a very strange affair because most of the address was about Ukraine, which was, in a sense, the topic of the hour, because what he's trying to do is solicit a big package of funds for Israel and for Ukraine. And it seems as if he's going to ask Congress for an appropriation of $100 billion. This is $100 billion on top of all the other appropriations. This isn't just something, allocating one set of funds from another set of funds. This is additional $100 billion in addition to the $1 trillion already on the military and the intelligence and whatnot. So $100 billion. Of this $100 billion, $60 billion will be assigned to Ukraine, which is, it's about half of, something like a half of what has been assigned to Ukraine militarily since the last February. So, and then 14 billion will be for Israel, and then the rest will be distributed among Taiwan and something for the border, security at the border, which supposedly Biden cares a great deal about. What was remarkable about his speech, and I want to go through it, is that he likened Russia with Hamas. Now, nothing unusual. I mean, Biden is given to this kind of thing. But having already declared that Hamas is pure evil in the world, as they have no other agenda other than killing Jews, likening Hamas to Russia seems rhetorical excess. Not that you would gather that from the media, which are always enthusiastic about anything that Biden does. So let's just go through this remarkable and kind of disgusting in many ways presentation last night. So here we have the this is his remarks, but even as you can see from the title, it's the response to Hamas's terrorist attacks against Israel and Russia's ongoing brutal war against Ukraine. And then he starts off with the whole stuff, and then he says the terrorist group Hamas unleashed pure, unadulterated evil in the world, but sadly, the Jewish people know, perhaps better than anyone, that there is no limit to the depravity of people when they want to inflict pain on others. And then he goes on and on. And then I also spoke with President Abbas of the Palestinian Authority and reiterated that the United States remains committed to the Palestinian people's right to dignity and to self-determination.
Really?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like what?
What was that bear hug of Netanyahu was all about? That was a bear hug. Okay,
that's right. Exactly.
He doesn't want to give the Palestinian people a bear hug. That's interesting.
No. That's exactly right. And again, let's recall when Netanyahu addressed the UN General Assembly, I think on September the 22nd, and then he presented the map of the new Middle East. There didn't seem to be any place on it for any Palestinian state. There was no West Bank, no Gaza. So evidently the new Middle East, in Netanyahu's view, does not include Palestinian self-determination. So like so many others, I'm heartbroken by the tragic loss of Palestinian life, including the explosion at a hospital in Gaza, which was not done by the Israelis.
He's pulling a Burrell again.
get that in. And I don't know, you saw there was somebody asked, a journalist asked at the State Department press briefing, will you be calling for an international investigation as to what happened to the hospital? And the State Department spokesperson, Price, I think his name is, said, no, I don't think there's any real need for that. Israel has provided a lot of information already, so there's no need for an international investigation. So Israel has provided a lot of a lot of information, so no need to any kind of investigation. So
well, George, the logic, it becomes inverted, because if they don't want to have an investigation, then the entire world will say, yeah, of course the Israelis did it, because you don't want an investigation.
Well, the logic is impeccable. I mean, if it's the innocent party that usually says, well, let's have an investigation, and the one who's trying to hide something says, no, we don't. I mean, Russia's been calling for investigations on what happened to Nord Stream, and the Americans and the British, no, we'll just let this, whatever the Danes and the Swedes and whoever is, whatever they're doing, let them go on and investigating away. The assault on Israel echoes nearly 20 months of war, tragedy, and brutality inflicted on the people of Ukraine, people that were very badly hurt since Putin launched his all-out invasion. We've not forgotten the mass graves, the bodies found bearing signs of torture, rape, used as a weapon by the Russians, and thousands of Ukrainian children forcibly taken into Russia, stolen from their parents. It's sick. All of this is complete garbage. I mean, it's very important that, we hardly need to repeat it, but we should at least repeat that, what the Russians did is they got children out of a war zone. At no point have the Russians said that if parents want to claim their children, we're not going to give them back to the parents. I mean, so they've said any child that has parents and they want them back, they go back. I mean, how is that worse than essentially children being slaughtered in Gaza? Yeah, the ICC is nowhere to be seen, and then no one is demanding any ICC investigation where children are actually being slaughtered.
Well, so far, George, this is just grasping at straws. This is an address of desperation. My goodness.
Yes.
It's not dispassionate. There's no strategy here. When you have to stoop to this level of rhetoric, I mean, this is just it's special pleading is what this is.
Yes. Yeah. Hamas and Putin represent different threats, but they share this in common. They both want to completely annihilate a neighboring democracy, completely annihilated. So when you're talking about rhetorical excesses, I mean, this is way, kind of rhetorical excesses. Who's doing the annihilating? I mean, when you think of it, like, Gaza really is, it's a tiny, enclave blockaded. Israel is a nuclear power. It's a nuclear power in the region. It's a regional superpower. And Hamas wants to obliterate it, annihilate it. Hamas, its stated purpose for existing is the destruction of the state of Israel and the murder of Jewish people. Again, false. This is all of this has been people have gone into it and says that Hamas has in the past accepted a kind of a modus vivendi with Israel while delaying final status negotiations.
Well, and George, if you look at the leadership of the Hamas that is interviewed, because they don't want to have their position be given airtime. It's never about Jews. It's about Zionism. Okay, that's what this is about. It's against an ideology that dispossesses them. It has nothing to do with Jewish people at all.
That's exactly right.
And this is what the West always conflates it with.
Absolutely. And it's crucial, absolutely crucial to this propaganda machine to confound these two completely different things, which is the state of Israel and the Jews. because many Jews around the world do not identify with Israel and do not believe that Israel is their state or that Israel in any way speaks for them. And in fact, it's always the anti-Semites who have been people who are deemed anti-Semitic who say Jews and Israel are the same thing, and that somehow that's your state. If somebody comes to you and you're Jewish and somebody says, well, Israel, that's your state, as if you have anything to do with it. That's always, well, that's the anti-Semite who says this. But now he's claiming, oh, the Jewish people, which is completely absurd.
And everybody, approximately 20% of Israeli citizens are non-Jews, and a good number of the ones that identify as being Jewish are secular Jews.
Right. Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people. Hamas uses Palestinian civilians as human shields, and innocent Palestinian families are suffering greatly because of them. Well, this is very interesting because, well, in the first place, Hamas did win an election, but okay, that was in 2006, so you can say that's 17 years ago. But if Hamas...
Yeah, but then after the election, George, the siege started, the blockade.
The siege started, exactly. Okay, but let's say you make the case, you want to argue and say Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people. Well, then why are you punishing the Palestinian people? If Hamas does not represent them, then what's the justification for inflicting so much pain on people who don't support Hamas? Because that's what we're doing. I mean, the whole idea that this is you're targeting, the Hamas leaders. That's not what they're doing. I mean, day after day, we're seeing destroyed buildings, dead children. So if they don't have anything to do with Hamas, how you justify what your good friend Bibi is doing?
And on top of it, the advent and rise of Hamas in the Palestinian territories, I said territories, was backed by the United States and even the Israeli government.
Right.
Okay, the origins of them coming to power lie in the government of Israel in Washington, D.C.
Right.
I mean, Hillary Clinton was furious. When the elections didn't go the way they wanted, which the U.S. government paid for, by the way.
No, that's exactly right. Also, keep in mind, Hamas won the election in both. It wasn't just in Gaza.
Exactly.
They won in the West Bank and in Gaza. But then there was a civil war between Fatah and Hamas, and eventually they settled on this situation where Fatah controls the West Bank and Hamas controls Gaza, but Hamas won the election in both. So,
and when was the last time Abbas was elected to anything, George? I can't remember. It's been so many.
I can't. So then he goes on. Meanwhile, Putin denies Ukraine has or ever had real statehood. He claims that the Soviet Union created Ukraine, which is correct. And again, he has not denied that Ukraine is real statehood. I mean, it's true. There was no Ukraine until the Soviet Union. And then he says, and just 2 weeks ago, he told the world that if the United States and our allies withdraw, and if the United States withdraw, our allies will as well, military support for Ukraine, it would have, quote, a week left to live, but we're not withdrawing. Well, first of all, if he's pretty much saying there that Ukraine would collapse without U.S. military support. That's Putin said. I think there's a lot of truth to that. But Biden does not disagree with it. He said, yeah, it would collapse. Well, then Putin is right. I mean, if a country cannot survive without total, military support, you have to put on life support. It has to be run from Washington. Then that's it. What kind of a state is it? That you can't survive without somebody coming in and constantly pumping more and more and more of taxpayer money belonging to others, not to Ukraine, but to other people. Then that would just confirm, well, it's not any kind of a real entity if that's the only way you can survive.
Well, and also, this is an admission that this is Joe Biden's war.
That's right.
It's his war, and he will not allow it to come to an end. For his own personal political future, legacy, right. I don't know. But apparently, George, it has really nothing to do with Ukraine.
That's right. I know these conflicts can seem far away, and it's natural to ask, why does this matter to America? Yes, indeed, that is very natural to ask. And again, natural to ask, why are you so preoccupied with Ukraine and with Gaza? I mean, aren't there problems in the United States? I mean, you don't seem interested in any problems in the United States. You seem, obsessively interested in Gaza. Again, how many interviews and statements has he already issued about Gaza since October the 7th? I mean, it's just mind-boggling.
Well, and on top of it, George, I know these conflicts can seem far away. Well, I suppose so, because Western media does not really educate the citizenry about foreign affairs very well. But more importantly, George, we had, in the case of Ukraine, two solid attempts to have the conflict come to an end. And who blocked it?
Right.
Joe Biden. Okay.
Right.
Now, in the case of the case for a Palestinian state, well, George and I would go blue in the face and my phone would die, okay, because it doesn't have that much energy. There have been multiple attempts, and the bottom line is Israel does not want a peace.
Right.
They want the destruction of the. They want they want the end of the Palestine issue, and
right.
the only way that's going to happen is when they get rid of those people, and this is what we're seeing now.
That's right. Yeah. So why does this matter to America? So let me share with you why making sure Israel and Ukraine succeed is vital for America's national security. So, oh, good. Now we're getting interested. Go on, tell us, please tell us.
I've always wondered. Maybe I'll find out.
Exactly. Yeah. Really, it's like, oh, you pull up your chair, thinking now finally we'll get the answer to this question. History has taught us that when terrorists don't pay a price for their terror, when dictators don't pay a price for their aggression, they cause more chaos and death and more destruction. So this is the same old warmed over cliche about Munich and dictators, none of which is incidentally true. It's based on just a moralistic fairy tale. Is that it? That's your answer? I mean, yes, again, you're wheeling out this whole Munich nonsense. But that's it. They keep going, and the costs and threats to America and to the world keep rising. None of that is remotely true. Hamas has very specific issues, long-standing issues, been going since 1948, going all the way back when the state of Israel was created. And Russia basically doesn't have an issue other than with Ukraine. I mean, the whole idea that Russia is going to then want something else. No evidence whatsoever. No one has ever presented any evidence to suggest that Russia has any ambitions, to take anybody else's territory.
Well, I really do also take exception, George, about labeling who is a terrorist and what is terrorism. Okay, this is just an abdication of any kind of morality whatsoever. When blowing up that hospital, that's terrorism, George. Okay, and a hospital that of long standing. It wasn't, the Israelis, they blew it up. They did it intentionally because they have been given a blank check, green light from the Biden administration, and this is what this speech is all about.
And today they blew up it didn't completely destroy it, but nonetheless they blew up a church, an Orthodox church from the 12th century.
From the 12th century.
12th century.
George, think about that. Just think about that for a second. All of the historical changes that have happened, and on that location, and it took 2023 for someone finally to take it out. It has stood for 1,500 years.
Yeah, well, exactly. 12th century. And the strange thing again is that there doesn't seem to be a great deal of excitement from the White House. I mean, you're worrying about terrorism. I mean, you also worry about Christians. This is one of the oldest churches in the world, in the home place essentially where Christianity was born. I mean, this is the Holy Land where Christianity was born.
The first structure was from
the 5th
426
yeah, that's
AD.
right. Yeah, the 5th century. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But again, this goes back to something we've talked about, because many other people have talked about it, which is that, like in Syria, where the Christians, the oldest Christian communities in the world, were threatened by complete extermination from ISIS, promoted by the United States and the United Kingdom. And these Christians look to Bashar al-Assad to save them. And they're very grateful to Assad for saving them. And, basically, this is the man who saves the ancient Christians, as did his father. Whereas the U.S. has been promoting the worst, scummiest kind of jihadism.
And George, it's intentionally forgotten, but there is a very, very large Jewish community in Tehran, in Iran itself.
Yes, yeah, that's right. So then he goes on. So if we don't stop Putin's appetite for power and control in Ukraine, he won't limit himself to just the Ukraine. Putin, has already threatened to remind Poland that their Western lands was a gift from Russia. Well, I have no idea well, I mean, are the Western lands. Okay, so that was the land that was taken from Germany. And it was, moreover, it was a wartime agreement. It was not a gift from Russia. It was a wartime agreement. United States, Great Britain, and the USSR made those decisions, what Poland's borders will be. Has anyone said that the plan is to hand this territory back to Germany? I mean, is that on the agenda? I mean, news to me. That's on the agenda.
I mean, but see, George, you hit the salient point right there. First of all, it wasn't Russia; it was the Soviet Union, and it was the Western allies fighting Nazi Germany that determined the current borders of the Polish state. So it's very convenient that you drop the Western allies out of this. Right. It's very convenient, but it's intentional. Right. Well, or it's just they don't know. Okay.
Well, it's a very tendentious misreading, of everything that Putin has said. I mean, I think, he sort of suggested that, Poland is really quite ungrateful by this constant attacks on Russia. And he said, well, basically, you lost some territory to the USSR, which then became territory, which is now part of Ukraine. So not to Russia. Russia didn't get any of that territory. But Poland was more than handsomely compensated for by very nice, very rich German lands. But he said, so what is this suggesting, that Russia is going to invade Poland and then take away territory? He will give it to Germany here, because the Russians like the Germans so much. Here's some nice, East Prussia for you. I know you like East Prussia. It's so stupid so he's not going to limit himself just to Ukraine.
Well, isn't it interesting? I mean, twice already. He's quoted Vladimir Putin, but why won't you quote the foreign ministry of the Russian Federation of the months leading up to the military conflict? There was a roadmap. There was an attempt to find compromise in reason, or at least start serious negotiations. Right. All of this is not mentioned here.
Right. That's exactly right. One of his top advisors, a former president of Russia, has called Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania Russia's Baltic provinces. They are all NATO allies. Well, lucky you. You've got such stalwart allies who daily go out of their way to think about how can we antagonize Russia just a little bit more today. How can we take down yet another Russian statue? Is there
or another way the European Union can violate its own laws on basic civil and human rights? Okay, these are EU countries also. Okay, that's and right. Denying Russian speakers in many cases very basic civil rights, human rights. I mean, they just can have their property stolen from them without any due process at all.
That's right. That's right. For 75 years, NATO has kept peace in Europe. No, it hasn't.
No, it hasn't.
And has been the cornerstone of American security. And if Putin attacks a NATO ally, we will defend every inch of NATO which the treaty requires and calls for. All right.
Well, Joe, we'll see about that.
We'll see. Good luck with that.
Yep.
We will have something that we do not seek. Make it clear we do not seek to have American troops fighting in Russia or fighting against Russia. So why did you get involved in this war then? I mean, if your goal is to avoid fighting Russia, then don't fight Russia. I mean, that's very simple. I mean, if that's your objective.
Why do you have the 52 airborne in Romania then?
Yeah. I mean, but this is Biden. I mean, he's just such gibberish. He just says these things and say, well, okay, if you don't want to fight Russia, then don't fight Russia. I mean, it's very simple. It's what all your predecessors did. We just don't want to fight them. And so we're going to go out of our way to make sure that we don't fight them.
Well, see, George, this is at the cornerstone of what is a failed policy. And you and I have mentioned it many times. The template that you learned from the Cold War is that great powers don't confront great powers. You can have all the skirmishes you want, all the proxies you want. It's all fair game, but you don't go one-to-one. And this is what makes Biden different.
Yes, that's exactly. Beyond Europe, we know that our allies and maybe most importantly, our adversaries and competitors are watching. They're watching our response in Ukraine as well. And if we walk away and let Putin erase Ukraine's independence, would-be aggressors around the world, those are these would-be aggressors. Imagine they're sort of sitting there. I'm a would-be aggressor.
George, what country in the world threatens the national security of the United States? Can you think of one?
I cannot think of any. No, it has to be one of the safest places in the world. I mean, you got Mexico. I mean, the only problem you have with Mexico are all these migrants, and you're not doing anything much about that. And then you've got this, I don't know, hapless kind of state called Canada, to your north. It's a very safe environment. Unlike anybody else in Europe or anywhere in the world, it's very, very safe to be in the United States.
The only thing Americans have to worry about is other Americans killing them, but that's another subject.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And if we walk away, erase would-be aggressors would be emboldened to try the same. Again, no evidence for any of that. The risk of conflict and chaos could spread in other parts of the world, in the Indo-Pacific, in the Middle East, especially in the Middle East. Well, you've been spreading chaos since time immemorial. I mean, wherever the United States goes, there's chaos. You've kind of created this absolute chaos in the Middle East, and this chaos that we've got at the moment, who knows how that's going to unravel. You created chaos in Ukraine. All completely unnecessary. And the idea, well, if we don't act, there'll be chaos. We're a force for stability. I mean, there's no one in the world other than these idiot policymakers and Biden who think that the United States is a force for stability.
It's the empire of chaos.
It is the empire of chaos. And then he gets on. Iran is supporting Russia in Ukraine, and it's supporting Hamas and other terrorist groups in the region, and will continue to hold them accountable, I might add.
Well, we could never forget to mention Iran.
Yeah. The
honorable mention in every
honorable mention. The United States and our partners across the regions are working to build a better future for the Middle East. Oh, right. Yeah.
Well, how's that working out?
Exactly. Oh, yeah, right. I'm looking forward to this good future. Better future for them, and one where the Middle East is more stable, better connected to its neighbors, and through innovating projects like the India, Middle East, Europe rail corridor that I announced this year at the summit of the world's biggest economies, more predictable markets, more employment, less rage, less grievances, less war when connected. It benefits the people. It could benefit the people of the Middle East and would benefit us. So you bombed Libya, destroyed that state. That state's just gone. You unleashed a war against Assad. That state also in a kind of a permanent now civil war. Now you embrace the cause of Israel as it's about to unleash God knows what in Gaza, and who knows what that will trigger in the Middle East. And you have the nerve to say that you're there promoting stability, a brighter future.
But this is an obvious stab at the Belt and Road Initiative of China. Yes. That's exactly what it is. And you're saying, well, we can do it. No, they're not going. This is a pipe dream. This is not going to happen because of American foreign policy in the Middle East. Okay,
Right.
And the bear hug that Biden gave Netanyahu will be gone soon, okay? But the legacy of that bear hug will last for at least a generation, okay? Okay. And one of the things that George and I have tried to impress upon people, with this Abraham Accords, which I'm just so tired of thinking about, is that this is with elites in the Middle East, okay? We've seen what the rank and file citizen of the Muslim Arab world thinks about what U.S. policy is. It's on display every single day. Okay, so and these Abraham Accord folks here, they're stepping back. They're definitely stepping back from it. So if that's what they really wanted to push through and have succeed, they have a failure of just a biblical standard here.
Oh, that's right. And what we've also seen is in the last few days, there have been attacks on American military bases throughout the Middle East, and there'll be more.
There'll be more.
Yeah, there's going to be more. These drones, they've kind of changed the way of war. I mean, they're very cheap. They're easy to make, and they're quite nasty. So there's going to be a lot more of these.
And George, so the issues of a war in peace are going to be over a drone destroyed a Humvee. Do we unleash, tactical nuclear weapons now? See, it creates such a quandary. Okay.
Right. No, that's right. American leadership is what holds the world together. All right. American alliances are what keep us, America, safe. Well, of course, America is not safe. We already saw, what bin Laden did. Bin Laden or whoever was behind the 9/11 attacks, did see it as revenge for what America had been doing. So, you keep meddling here, there, and everywhere. You are not safe. I mean, you become less safe. I mean, that it's so
well, George. You and I are called, bigots and racists and all that. But one of my primary worries about having such an open border is that you don't know who's coming in.
Nope.
Okay, you just simply don't know. Okay.
No,
you know what I'm getting at. Okay.
No, you're absolutely right. And by giving Netanyahu this bear, again, he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to go there in the middle of a war. Netanyahu was rubbing it in. This is the first time an American president has come to us when we're in the middle of a war. He went there. He embraced Netanyahu. He hasn't stopped yapping about this attack on Israel while saying very little about what's going on in Gaza. So what are people going to do? They're going to think, hey, America and Israel are one and the same. So, let's hit the Americans.
Exactly right.
American values are what make us a partner that other nations want to work with. To put all that at risk, if we walk away from Ukraine, if we turn our backs on Israel, is just not worth it. That's why tomorrow I'm going to send to Congress an urgent budget request to fund America's national security needs to support our critical partners, including Israel and Ukraine. Now, my feeling is that this is going to go through Congress. I mean, because the Republicans are divided, and Jordan. I mean, I think Jordan, who wants to get that speakership, he's trying to persuade the 20 who have voted against him to vote for him. And one thing that he's got is saying, I will bring this to the floor for a vote. Even if I don't necessarily vote for aid for Ukraine, I will bring this to the floor. And if it goes to the floor, then there will be overwhelming support because all the Democrats are going to vote for this. So just enough Republicans will vote for it. It'll go through. And pretty much the entire Senate's going to vote for this. So that's going to go through. And as we've been predicting, America is not abandoning Ukraine. Most of this package, $60 billion, that is a lot of change, is going to Ukraine. He
didn't say much. He said in his speech, he said very little about Gaza.
Not exactly, very little, very little.
No, this is a desperate attempt to keep an elite war on the agenda, and the cynicism. It's hard to comprehend. The cynicism of this man is that you have a population of 2.2 million people, basically occupying the size of a postage stamp. Okay, being destroyed, literally destroyed in every sense, but he talks mostly about Ukraine.
Exactly.
And all of the money, the counteroffensive, the volunteer, Victoria knew, yes, we've been working very closely with,
Right.
and what'd you get? You got squat.
Yeah,
You got
that's
squat.
right.
Okay?
No, that's right.
I
That's
get
exactly.
another 60 billion. They're going to turn the corner. We have them. They're on the run. We're on the touch. We're almost on the. I can't remember football terms. A touchdown line. Okay.
Right. No, that's exactly right. And
General Petraeus said that. We're just, the surge is just around the corner.
there's a lot, because there's a lot of money splashing around and going
You
to a lot of
bet.
people's pockets, because Ukraine is a money laundering operation. Money goes to Ukraine, then it comes back to Washington, to all the various think tanks and consultancies where people like Petraeus are making a lot of money. And so, yeah, well, let's keep the spigot moving. That 60 billion is going to disappear very quickly. I mean, it's not like, oh, whoa, 60 billion, that'll do nicely. No.
No, it's kind of, isn't it, George? It isn't kind of like a civil settlement, where say you and I are put on trial and we get the dream team lawyers, and we win, but we only get 5% of what we're trying to get, and the lawyers get paid. Everybody gets paid.
The lawyers get paid right away.
They get paid first.
Forget about your money, yes, because whatever you may have won, that's going to be put in escrow because the other side may appeal. But the lawyers get paid. Their money is not put in escrow. So, it's a smart investment. We're back to the smart investment. It's a smart investment that's going to pay dividends for American security for generations. So getting involved in a dangerous confrontation with Russia is good for American security. Apparently, we're now safer. Thank God we're really safe. We got, and then next time, Biden, we talk about how Russia is, rattling its nuclear arsenal. Oh, we're closer to nuclear Armageddon than we've ever been in our history, as if this is just sort of happening, out there, has nothing to do with Biden. So it's good that we're confronting, antagonizing Russia, because it makes us that much safer.
But George, I wanted to say this a second ago, and I had a Biden moment, and I forgot. But these are all choices. These are all choices. Where is the choice for negotiation? Where is the choice for compromise? Where is the moment of, I wonder how, I'm trying to see the world through the other guy's eyes.
Right.
That's gone.
That's
okay.
gone.
All of these are choices.
You're absolutely right. Because at this very moment, Biden could, get onto Putin and say, why don't we sponsor an international conference on the Middle East? Russia would go for it right in an instant. So would China. And so, yeah, we will have everybody, all the powers in the Middle East are invited, just like the Madrid conference in 1991. We're going to have to sit there and then discuss the future. And we're going to lay the law down for all the parties, because we are the great powers of the world, and we are in a position to lay the law down to the much smaller parties. It's not going to do it. So just as in the case of Ukraine, Biden doesn't have a peace agenda. Biden doesn't have any proposal for, well, how do we go forward? Yeah, we're going to smash Hamas, destroy Hamas is evil. Hamas wants to kill all the Jews. Okay, well, what's your plan for moving forward? How do we try to alleviate the confrontation so that we're actually moving in some ways towards a peaceful resolution? He doesn't have any plan for that. And yet it would easily be within his powers, just as Ukraine would easily be within his powers. They don't want it. Biden does not want peace. Neither does Rishi Sunak. Neither does Macron. And neither does Sergeant Schultz. Whatever he's doing. I never didn't know even what he's doing. But whatever it is, he doesn't want peace. In Israel, we must make sure that they have what they need to protect their people today and always. So that's it. So we have to make sure that they
always
have, yeah.
Always.
That's right.
Always.
That's right. The security package I'm sending to Congress and asking Congress to do is an unprecedented commitment to Israel's security that will sharpen Israel's qualitative military edge, which we've committed to, the qualitative military edge. Against whom? Against these Gazans. I mean, you need all this sophisticated weaponry against Hamas. I mean,
yeah, well, George, all of that sophisticated weaponry over the last, let's say, 50 years didn't stop Hamas from breaking out of the open air prison to conduct its mischief. Okay, so what happened to that qualitative edge? Because it doesn't seem to be working.
No, it doesn't. We're going to make sure Iron Dome continues to guard the skies over Israel. We're going to make sure other hostile actors in the region know that Israel is stronger than ever and prevent this conflict from spreading. Prevent this conflict from spreading. Yeah. So one way you can guarantee it to spread is if you start going in and giving Israel, a blank check to wipe out the Palestinians. That's a guarantee that the conflict.
But the United States is not part of the conflict.
It's not a party to the conflict.
It's not part of. It's not a party to the conflict.
Yes, that's right. Look, at the same time, Netanyahu, the president, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and I discussed again yesterday the critical need for Israel to operate by the laws of war. Good. Whew, the laws of war.
Well, why is that mentioned, George? Why? It's because he knows they won't. That's why he's mentioning it.
That's right. They won't, but he has to make sure, having given the bear hug, that America's not on the hook for having encouraged Israel to commit war crimes. So he has to say, I told Netanyahu that he has to operate by the laws of war. So don't blame me for any subsequent war crimes. I told him not to do it.
Yeah, I always tell arsonists not to smoke cigarettes around the gas station. But, I say it, George. I warned them.
I warned you, yeah. That means protecting civilians in combat as best they can. The people of Gaza urgently need food, water, and medicine. Well, that's really good of you to say this. Now, while you've been talking all this time about Israel and how the Jews are hated and Holocaust and not this, that, Holocaust, the other, there's been this blockade of Gaza. They've been denying food, water, and medicine into Gaza, but you haven't said anything all this time. You've said nothing. It's now 2 weeks since the attack, and you've said nothing about this blockade. That is clearly a war crime by any definition, by holding a civilian population hostage in war. That is, a classic definition of a war crime. Yet he said nothing, and so he knows this, or at least the people around him know this. And so he pretends, well, I told him he has to follow the laws of war. They're already not following the laws of war. Already, they're violating the laws of war.
Just a sidebar, there apparently is a growing rebellion within the State Department because they know that the Biden administration's approach is it's a blatant lie. Okay, and there are people in the State Department that have been studying this for years, pushing American policy, but even this has gone beyond over the line. Okay, and it's Jake Sullivan's brother, who is one of the major players in the State Department. So you have Blinken and the two Sullivan brothers, and they say they want people to speak up, but people know that they're being cowed into silence. There was a major figure that resigned a couple.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. But somebody who's actually involved in the procurement of arms.
Yeah.
So yesterday, in discussion with the leaders of Israel and Egypt, I secured an agreement for the first shipment of humanitarian assistance from the United Nations to Palestinian civilians in Gaza. First shipment. So there's 2 weeks, and this is the first shipment. I secured this first shipment. First of all, as we're speaking, this hasn't gone through yet. The Rafah crossing.
The Israelis attacked the Rafah crossing twice.
Right, exactly. And even what we're talking about, 20 trucks, that doesn't sound like enough to, it's not like the Bible, the 20 trucks isn't going to feed 2 million. So if Hamas...
George, there are hundreds of trucks waiting to get in, hundreds. Everyone, before October 7th, about 500 trucks entered Gaza from the Rafah crossing every day. Let me say that again. 500 trucks a day And now they're talking about 20 on a one-off.
Right, right. If Hamas does not divert or steal the shipment, these shipments, we're going to provide an opening for sustained delivery of life-saving humanitarian assistance for the Palestinians. In other words, at any time, we can stop this by claiming that Hamas is not diverting or stealing the shipment. Well, Hamas runs Gaza. That's the administration of Gaza. So how are you going to determine that Hamas has not taken this shipment?
Well, that's his get out of jail free card.
Yes.
There's going to be no humanitarian aid going in. Come on, this is just fiction.
Yeah, I agree. It's a head fake. This is a classic head fake. You know, that this whole thing that, oh, well, I arranged it. I talked to President Sisi, and we're going to arrange for this humanitarian aid going into across the Rafah crossing. It ain't gonna happen, or it'll happen, you know, for 24 hours, and then it won't happen ever again. So. And as I said in Israel, as hard as it is, we cannot give up on peace. I mean, we cannot give up on peace. You scumbag. I mean, you've never done anything in your whole career for peace. You've always been a warmonger. We cannot give up on a two-state solution. You've never done anything to promote a two-state solution. Israel and the Palestinians equally deserve and live in safety, dignity, and peace. You know, and here at home, we have to be honest with ourselves. In recent years, too much hate. So now he's going to segue into his favorite topic, which is the hating this half of the country.
It's his Black Lives Matter routine. Here we go.
That's right. Yeah, all the ultra MAGA Trumpians, the white supremacists, the white nationalists, the anti-vaxxers, all the people that he's always been hating. We've been giving too much oxygen, fueling racism, a rise in anti-Semitism, Islamophobia right here in America. Again, all of this is just complete fiction, there's no anti-Semitism, no Islamophobia, but yeah, just keep whipping this up.
Yeah, well, there is something there, George, but it's not what Joe Biden says. It's anti-establishment, essentially.
Yes, that's
what is there.
Yeah. On October the 7th, terror attacks have triggered deep scars and terrible memories in the Jewish communities. Today, again, you're confounding completely different things. I mean, it's not about the Jewish community. It was an attack on Israel. You may not like. I mean, you can say they were killed civilians. That were very nasty, but it's not an attack on the Jewish community. I mean, this is a war against Israel,
and its ideology of Zionism.
Right, exactly. Today, Jewish families worried about being targeted in school, wearing symbols of their faith, walking down the street, or going about their daily lives. I know. Is he talking about Israel, or is it America? In the United States, Jewish families are worried about being targeted in school. I mean. It's just ridiculous. I know many of you in the Muslim American community or the Arab American community, the Palestinian American community, and so many others are outraged and hurting, saying to yourselves, here we go again with Islamophobia and distrust we saw after 9/11. So he's sort of, rubbishing the United. Oh, it's all the Americans with Islamophobia, which was always, incidentally, wildly exaggerated. There was no widespread Islamophobia. There was initially there was some anger about what happened, but the idea that it was all just made up, that there was this widespread Islamophobia in the United States. But that's what people like Biden always do.
And anti-Semitism is grossly over.
Of course it is. It's completely. I mean, yeah. We're a nation of religious freedom, freedom of expression. We all have the right freedom. The whole idea that the Biden administration, which is in favor of freedom of expression. You had a court. A court said that you basically, the Biden administration is the greatest threat to the First Amendment in U.S. history. A ruling by a federal district court that was upheld by a circuit court. That basically what the Biden administration had been doing was the most serious threat to the First Amendment in U.S. history, essentially leaning on social media platforms to extirpate messages that the government didn't like. We all have a right to debate and disagree without fear of being targeted at schools or workplaces or in our communities. So again, why is he talking about this? What does any of this got to do with anything? I mean, it's just lecturing. He's again lecturing the Americans about how he supposedly is on some elevated level, I'm against hatred and intolerance. And we must renounce violence and vitriol to see each other not as enemies, but as fellow Americans. What is any of that? This is... When I was in Israel yesterday, I said that when America experienced the hell of 9/11, we felt enraged as well. While we sought and got justice, we made mistakes. So I caution the government of Israel not to be blinded by rage. So you caution the government by giving Netanyahu all the weapons he wants. He just said, just a moment ago, we're going to give Israel everything he wants. So you tell them, here are all your guns, all your, all the, weapons, but don't be blinded by rage.
Well, but George, what did Biden get in return?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. That's
nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing. No commitment by Netanyahu. Oh, we won't be blinded by rage. We
won't attack hospitals.
That's right.
We won't attack schools.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. But that's always the case with Israel, which is you get nothing in return. No, don't be blinded by rage. No, definitely. And here in America, let us not forget who we are. We reject all forms of hate, whether against Muslims, Jews, or anyone. That's what great nations do. And we are a great nation. Again, what does any of this got to do with anything? I mean, he's giving an address, basically saying he's going to be forking over $100 billion of American taxpayer money, a lot of money, to fuel wars, two wars at least. Maybe we can get one off the ground in China as well. And then he's lecturing the very people who are going to be funding this. You're lecturing them. Oh, you're very bad people. You hate Muslims and you hate Jews. But give us your money to go fuel these wars. On Ukraine, I'm asking Congress to make sure we can continue to send Ukraine the weapons they need to defend themselves. I love this. It's always when they say that, defend yourselves. That's it. You're defending yourselves. That's right. And a country without interruption, so Ukraine can stop Putin's brutality in Ukraine. They are succeeding. When Putin invaded Ukraine, he thought he would take Kiev and all of Ukraine in a matter of days. Well, over a year later, Putin has failed, and he continues to fail. Kiev still stands because of the bravery of the Ukrainian people. But you just said a moment ago that if we cut off the funds, Ukraine will fall. I mean, you didn't challenge that. Ukraine would fall. So, what exactly have you achieved? I mean, if it just simply collapses, immediately. I mean.
No, the goal is to keep the war going. That's
it.
That's it.
That's exactly it. It's a money laundering operation. You just send the money, and the money comes back, and other people are getting rich. Just keep the war going.
And then the Zelensky cabal, they take their cut.
They take exactly. It's like American taxpayers who really aren't doing well at all. Oh well, here's another $100 billion. Okay, sure. That's it. Let's send it over.
Well, Jimmy Dore always says, and I'm quoting him because I don't know the source, but of what he says. But $100 billion, you can wipe out poverty in America. So,
well, it's a lot of money. I mean, yeah. I mean, when you think of, the population of America is 300 million. 100 billion is 100,000 million. So you can do the arithmetic.
You're good at the math, George.
Yeah, it's not hard. Ukraine has regained more than 50% of the territory Russian troops once occupied. I don't know where they get that number. They all repeat this number, but okay. Backed by U.S.
Okay. It's very, very simple. Is that in the first half of the conflict, Russia overextended itself with essentially what we would call SWAT operations, and the Russians realized that they were vulnerable and they pulled back in a very orderly fashion. And then the Ukrainians retook it, and they took huge losses in the process. So it's a nice talking. Only 3% of the defense budget goes to Ukraine. All this nonsense.
Yeah, exactly. US-led coalition of more than 50 countries around the world, and all doing its part to support Kiev. What will happen if we walked away? Well, if you walk
Maybe
away,
peace would be made.
exactly, it would be very easy. You walk away, peace is breaking out all over. We are the essential nation. Meanwhile, Putin has turned to Iran and North Korea to buy attack drones and ammunition to terrorize Ukrainian cities and people. From the outset, I said I will not send American troops to fight in Ukraine. But again, this makes no sense. In terms, on the one hand, the stakes are so high, we have to save the world, and only America can save the world. And then he says, "Well, I will not send American troops to fight in Ukraine." Well, then what are you doing? I mean, if that's what it takes to save the world, then how can you say no to sending American troops? I mean, it's such pattern dishonesty.
Well, in Iran and North Korea are sending drones or missiles to Russia. Well, what are you sending to Ukraine?
Yeah,
Okay, you're not part of the conflict. Okay,
that's right, exactly. We're not part of the conflict, but of course, if Ukraine and North Korea do, then they are part of the conflict. It's amazing. They are parties to the conflict. Yeah.
Go figure.
Yeah. All Ukraine is asking for is help for the weapons, munitions, the capacity, the capability to push invading Russian forces off their land, and the air defense systems to shoot down Russian missiles before they destroy Ukrainian cities. But they've been asking for this now for, it's going on for 20 months, and they're still asking, and they're still on the brink of collapse if they don't get all this stuff. So it's a limitless commitment. I mean, you're basically saying, well, we're going to just keep sending it. It's just like, well, this is just a one-off. That's it. That's for this year. The 60 billion. That's
Well,
more. We're not going to ask for any more until, of course, next month.
Let's do a split screen here. Look at and if you want to watch Al Jazeera, they're doing a pretty good job of covering it, I have to admit. The leveling of entire neighborhoods in one shot.
Right.
Well, Kiev is still standing.
Right.
People go to parties and they go to cafes, and if you can pay your way out of it, life is just fine. Okay, so there's been no carpet bombing of any Ukrainian city. Okay.
Right. That's exactly right. And let us be clear about something. We send Ukraine equipment sitting in our stockpiles, and when we use the money allocated by Congress, we use it to replenish our stores, our own stockpiles with new equipment that defends America and is made in America. Oh, thank God, there's jobs.
I think that I would really quibble with that. They do a lot of outsourcing of certain items. I mean, it's almost it's a national security risk. The outsourcing.
Yeah, no, Patriot missiles for air defense batteries made in Arizona, artillery shells manufactured in 12 states across. So it's as he presents it as a kind of a job creation program. And then in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Texas, and so much more. Just as in World War II, today, patriotic American workers are building the arsenal of democracy and serving the cause of freedom. Why are they patriotic? How are you patriotic if you're, you're working to keep a war going in Ukraine? I mean, what's that got to do with patriotism? I remember he still hasn't explained what exactly these goals and objectives in Ukraine are. Why exactly you've gone all in any more than he explained why when you get rid of all that hot air about the Jewish people and centuries of persecution, when you got rid of all that, you still haven't explained why exactly is this an American national interest. Let me close with this. Earlier this year, I boarded Air Force One for a secret flight to Poland. There, I boarded a train with blacked out windows for a 10-hour ride each way to Kiev to stand with the people of Ukraine ahead of the one-year anniversary of their brave fight against Putin. I'm told I was the first American president to enter a war zone not controlled by the United States military since President Lincoln. With me was just a group of security personnel and a few advisors. But when I entered the train and met Zelensky, I didn't feel alone. I was bringing with me the idea of America, the promise of America to the people who are today fighting for the same things we fought for 250 years ago: freedom, independence, self-determination. This is, as yesterday, the Ukrainian parliament voted to outlaw the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. These are the ideals that we're fighting for. That's basically, that's a church.
Well, it's a lot of self-promotion too. I mean, it's a rule of thumb, everyone, that no sitting president should be ever allowed to compare themselves to Lincoln. Okay, so he's the new Lincoln. Okay, all right, guy got that. Okay, that's called political blasphemy.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, Lincoln and Washington. You don't compare yourselves to either. But I mean, the idea of saying that I was bringing with me the idea of America, the promise of America, the people who are today fighting for the same things we fought for 250 years ago. Well, how, I mean, they're outlawing political parties, they're imprisoning their opponents, they're outlawing.
There's no freedom of speech.
There's no freedom of speech. They're outlawing a church. That's a pretty fundamental one. If you're going to talk about the United States, I mean, this is just complete, utter drivel, total lies that he's peddling, before the people. And as I walked through Kiev with President Zelensky, with air raid sirens sounding in the distance, I felt something I've always believed more strongly than ever before. America is a beacon to the world, still. We are, as my friend Madeleine Albright said, the indispensable nation. This speech is of such elevated bullshit. I mean, it's hard to think of any comparable speech that any American president. I mean, FDR never talked in these terms. Reagan never talked in these terms.
Well, and then when you think of Nixon, when he addressed the nation about Vietnam, he had maps, he had numbers. He said, this is what my generals are saying. Okay, right. You can disagree with what he decided on. That's fine. But I mean, it was a coherent message. Yeah. Okay, and this is our plan. This is our goal, and victory means this.
Oh, that's absolutely right. I mean, this is just such indispensable nation. I mean, what kind of talk is that? I mean, and as Madeleine Albright said, "Oh, Madeleine Albright. Well, that's a real authority." The person who was gone down essentially in history with infamy about the 500,000 Iraqi children, which will never be forgotten. I mean, long after Madeleine Albright will be forgotten, that remark of hers about the 500,000 Iraqi children, that'll live on.
Well,
live on
George,
infamy.
An indispensable nation. Well, let's unpack that. That means other nations are dispensable.
Well, that's exactly what she means. That other nations are dispensable. Yeah.
That's a real American value, isn't it? I guess.
Right. But the amazing thing again with this whole gaseous, vacuous warmongering, because it's basically a lot of hot air to justify war. There's no attempt here to put forward anything that would suggest peace. Because all this garbage about, we don't want to give ourselves over to hatred, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, that is nothing. That's absolutely nothing. There's no suggestion here of how do we actually move towards peace and reconciliation. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, there's no plan whatsoever. And again, Nixon was, he was talking about, well, we're also got the negotiations going on in Paris. I mean, that was an ongoing thing, but nonetheless, he would make reference to the Paris conference that went on for several years, which eventually came to a settlement. But there's nothing here. Tonight, there are innocent people all over the world who hope because of us, who believe in a better life because of us, who are desperate not to be forgotten by us. Where are these innocent people? I mean, other than, I imagine, a few people in Israel, I can't think of anyone thinking, well, boy, my hopes are on America. This is where I rest my hopes. That the United States goes and does whatever it needs to do because the United States is the indispensable nation. I mean, who anywhere is thinking that? Maybe
inside the Beltway.
Else is thinking that.
Inside the Beltway, he's talking.
Inside the Beltway, exactly. So you're talking about yourself. I mean, I mean, sure, people, when they talk about themselves, they like to flatter themselves. I mean, that's human nature. That's it. So you're just, people inside the Beltway are flattering themselves because it's good to flatter yourself. But time is of the essence. I know we have our divisions at home. We have to get past them. We can't let petty, partisan, angry politics get in the way of our responsibilities as a great nation. Wow, this is really magnificent. I mean, it's just.
Well, he probably thinks so, and so does Jake Sullivan, which he is. I'm sure he has all his fingerprints all over it. We have a foreign policy elite that is so inept. It's staggering. It's
right.
Staggering.
Right. That's right. I think, but I do think that what is important to remember from this is the United States is not giving up on Ukraine. I mean, there's been a lot of speculation about how, they're going to abandon Ukraine. They've invested so much in Ukraine, they're not going to abandon it. I mean, to them, Ukraine is what it has always been, a battering ram, an aircraft carrier directed at Russia. And they're going to keep doing this. They're going to keep coming back.
And they're going to get the same results. Okay. And that's what that is the tragedy and the pity of all of this.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. This is Friday evening. This did not inspire me, George.
No, it's not an inspiring message. And I think I don't know. I just feel it's a national tragedy that this character is president. I mean, it's something that deeply has gone wrong when somebody's so.
Yeah, but see, there's I don't see any positive deliverables. What does it mean? So America will succeed if the Palestinians are ethnically cleansed and pushed into the desert, or there'll be no longer any men under the age of 40 in Ukraine. Is that your metric? Is that your metric?
That's right. He has given there's no message there at all, other than, well, we have to give everything that Israel wants, because Israel has to defend itself. And we're going to definitely do something for the Palestinians. We're going to make sure that there's a humanitarian convoy of 20 trucks with some humanitarian aid. That's it. That's all. That's his entire message. I mean,
George, I always hate to date ourselves here, but for our viewers, George and I have watched the so-called Middle East peace process our entire lives, okay? And this is what it's gotten down to. This is what all of that time, all of that hot air and all that wasted ink and paper and conferences, and this is what we get? This is the end game of 50 years for peace in the Middle East? Really? Then somebody has to be held accountable for this.
Yeah, well, that's right. And again, it's not something that should have been impossible to achieve. I mean, there are certain things that are very difficult to achieve, but this really wouldn't have been. I mean, ultimately, Israel was a creation of the United Nations. It was a creation of the great powers, and the great powers, could have made sure that there was some kind of peace. There was a peace settlement, but it didn't happen that way. So since 1948, there hasn't been any kind of a settlement, and it comes from the United States. I mean, there was, at least up until the 1970s, there was some effort on the part of the United States to keep some sort of a peace process going, but then it just got there's less and less of it as the United States got more and more in hock to Israel, where he expressed his love. I just love Israel.
Remember Martin Indyk? He was the U.S. ambassador to Israel, and there were claims and there were an investigation, and it was eventually dropped. But he was accused of being an agent for the Israeli state, and he was the American ambassador. Okay, right. Again, charges were dropped. Officially, there was no wrongdoing, but it kind of gives you.
But it was always peculiar because Martin Indyk, had been head of that. Something called the Institute for Middle East Studies or Institute for Near East Studies, but that was set up by AIPAC. So AIPAC created this institute that he headed, and then he got he got this job as ambassador
I
to
have
Israel.
an email. I have an email. There was a person there that from time to time would appear on my program, and then the hammer came down, and it was an email to the entire institute saying, "Don't go on Peter Lavelle's program." Okay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's what they needed. Oddly enough, Indyk in public often sounded much more moderate than some
Well,
of
he's
Israel's most
actually
fervent.
shown some kind of contrition. I remember
Right.
it was a
Yeah.
couple of years ago, but
Yeah, but I never knew whether he always sounded moderate because he wanted to stave off obvious criticisms. So, but look, I mean, if you're head of a think tank that was set up by AIPAC, you're not exactly the suitable candidate to be U.S. ambassador to Israel. I mean, you're not expected to take a dispassionate view of Israel, and you're right. Then there was an investigation. It was a little bit more than just simply working for AIPAC, and it was dropped. But again, I mean, it goes on, on through the year after year, and all these politicians, they know for their political survival, they have to declare their love Israel. This was
a bear hug. But but the bear hug is a deadly embrace, and we're seeing the result of that right now.
Yeah. I mean, and again, it's so peculiar. I mean, again, these people, they're not Jews, so therefore Israel doesn't really do anything for you. You don't speak Hebrew. I mean, you don't even speak their language, and these many of these Israeli politicians that you love, they can barely speak English. I mean, not Netanyahu, of course, speaks excellent English, but many of these people, they speak very heavily accented, broken English. And then you declare your undying love for this state.
We can end on this because it's important to mention, is that inside of Israel, inside the media space in Israel, there is a very rich and contentious debate about the entire Zionist project, the failure of Netanyahu, the rise of the radical right, which is very, very openly, proudly racist. Okay, and Joe Biden is talking. We got to come together. We need kumbaya. Look at the Israeli media. George and I are very critical of Israel's domestic and foreign policy, but inside of Israel, you can talk about what you think, okay? Well, if you're Palestinian, you have to be careful, but that's not allowed in the United States. It's not allowed in U.S. media. The level and tenor and richness of debate in Israel is not allowed in the West.
You want to also be very careful. Overwhelmingly, there is enormous support within Israel for any thing that Netanyahu is going to do.
I'm not disagreeing with you. What I'm saying, there are voices out there that can push back and say, we need to rethink this, not on the same level. I mean, sure, we have Glenn Greenwald and we have people like that, okay? But I'm talking about within the newspaper cuts.
I think that's right. But overwhelmingly, the Israeli public, whether they're pro-Netanyahu or anti-Netanyahu, they want to go in and kill them. I mean, when it comes to Gaza. So in fact, in some ways, using that logic that, we can attack the Gazans because they all support Hamas, the same logic can be applied to Israel. We can attack it because you support the harshest lines against the Gaza. So I mean, there are, of course, as you said, people like Gideon Levy who have a platform, but but the Israeli public opinion is very hawkish.
Right now, it's a bloodlust. Okay, but my point is, at least you can push back against the countervailing opinion. Okay, you might not get far. Ask Gideon Levy; he hasn't gotten very far. Okay, but he still says what he wants to think. All right. This speech really kind of says it all. As George pointed out in the beginning, it was mostly about Ukraine. So Joe Biden's not giving up on his war, okay? And he needs a lot of money for a lot of it, okay?
That's right. Oh, and it's not his money. It's all taxpayer money. That's it. Always very easy to be generous with other people's money. I mean, so long as it's not coming out of your pocket and somebody else's pocket, then we're America. We've got to step up to the plate.
Yeah, well, we've seen how that's worked out. All right, everybody, this is The Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on Local, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. Please visit our store. Since this is Friday, that means you got a long way until George's live stream.
Exactly, a long, long wait. So you're gonna have to spend indoors watching, binge watching. I mean, Peter knows these TV shows better than I do, so he can recommend excellent shows to watch. But if you can make it through this long weekend, then Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern time, please join me. Come with comments, criticisms, and suggestions. On the way out the door, think about little Buddy, because Buddy said, I had to listen to Biden's speech. I'm not happy. So he's in a really, Buddy's in a really foul mood. So he feels that he needs to be rewarded for having to listen to Biden's speech. So if you got a few bob in your pocket, whip it out, dunk him in his tip jar. That might assuage his anger a little bit. I wouldn't count on it, but it might help. We're very grateful for all your help and friendship and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on technology. And above all, Buddy won't feel that he's being taken advantage of. He hates that. So remember, if you like The Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.